Yeah, like it's been open.
It's been open. I think it's gonna be open.
Oh, okay. What's the question?
I thought in previous years it was only open. Oh, but it's sort of different this time, isn't it?
What? I remember back in 2012, before I started doing these plein air events, I went to the Wayne Art Center just to check out the show, and then when I didn't know about Charlie, when I first got there, I was looking at everybody's paintings, and I'm like, "Who's this Charlie Hunter guy? Oh my God, it's amazing!" His work always impresses. It's just I love it.
Well, I've always really been impressed by Charlie Hunter's work. You know, there aren't many painters who are so confident about, just saying, I don't need color, I don't need terribly fancy materials. He keeps his method really simple, but he gets a whole lot of really interesting subtleties in his work. His variety of mark making is always really dynamic. Pretty much any piece he does, I would consider it to be a very dynamic piece. So, yeah, Charlie Hunter's always impressed me. He has a great attitude about a lot of things. He's always able to kind of relieve tension through humor, and it's fun to be around. But it also seems like he's able to dive into his work in a more daring way because of that. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be around.
Charlie stands out. He's a unique individual. Basically, I think he's one of the most thoughtful artists out here. I'm glad he's a part of our community, and I enjoy what he brings to the table.
Yeah, Charlie Hunter as an artist. I've been watching his work for probably about 10 years. That's when I first became aware of him. And he lives up near me. I'm in Massachusetts. He's in Vermont. And so the landscape I know well. And that's one of the major things I like about Charlie's work is it's a real honest and direct portrayal of that sort of landscape and that sort of well, it's kind of a bygone time, the old farming communities up in Vermont, and I think he captures some of that spirit. I also really feel he's a poet, and by that I mean he chooses really carefully what he includes in his paintings. He's thoughtful about the message, and he tries to allude to something that's beyond a visual. So that's my feelings in a nutshell, my thoughts in a nutshell of Charlie Hunter. Charlie is a little divergent in his approach to plein air. First of all, his palette is very restrictive, and if you walk into any of the events that we do, they stand out for that reason. There's some would call them monochrome when they're really not. He's using other colors, but in very subtle ways. First impression is, oh, this is a single color painting. And so that makes them stand out. And I like that myself. I feel that's a very good way to approach landscape. I like his choices for subject matter. He chooses common scenes that we might pass by and not give any thought about. He picks that up as a subject and elevates it to something that's really exquisite. His contribution to the plein air events, I think, is really significant because he just shows us that a person's individual vision is really the most cherished thing, the most important thing. And we see that when we go through the plein air Easton this year. There's just so many visions, so many individual interpretations. You could put 20 of these artists around the same subject. Each one is going to look a little different. And Charlie is really genuine in that way.
Are you really? I'm sure we'll keep you busy.
And yes, as you can probably figure it out, today is a surprise. We have Charlie Hunter. We'll talk about Charlie Hunter and about his involvement in plein air, his paintings, and talk about it, you know, about him as a person, which I think he has a great personality. So let's go and meet Charlie Hunter.
Plein air is really, it's just a fancy word. It's like au jus. It's the fancy word for painting outdoors. Humans have been painting outdoors forever. It's just recently we started calling it plein air in the last 150 years. Wanting to document the landscape is really, it's endemic to human nature. I mean, you look at the Lascaux cave paintings, that was painted indoors, but they were documenting what was happening outside. And painting in natural light is really fun, it's really challenging. So as an art form, it is kind of distinct from studio work in that it is inherently kind of more journalistic, because it is, you're reacting to the world around you, not necessarily attempting to communicate a complex series of thoughts, but just saying this is what the world is like today in front of me. I think painting outdoors is really important for anybody getting seriously into an artistic practice. It's surprising to me how when you see people who only paint in the studio attempting to paint outdoors for the first time, it's usually really overwhelming to them, even very, very accomplished artists. So I think it's a wonderful practice to get used to painting outdoors. It has its own series of challenges. The light changes radically every 3 hours. So basically, you've got to complete a painting, basically tell a story in a maximum of a 3-hour window, because after that, the light changes completely. That is a wonderful challenge, and it's something too many people have no idea how to do. A really important component of any artistic practice, if you're doing representational art, you also have to get used to sketching all the time. People think that to be an artist, that means applying paint to a canvas. That is one fraction of what being a working artist consists of. If you don't have enough time to set up and apply paint to canvas and complete a story, just carry a sketchbook with you. Spend 20 minutes doing a sketch. That is going to pay dividends in the long run. I've been a music manager in the 1990s, and when I quit the business around 2000, I really wanted to get back into painting. And I've kind of lost my touch, and I just hadn't been doing it. So I went out almost every day for about 3 months, and I was painting with acrylic, I was painting with watercolor, I was painting with gouache. They weren't very good paintings, but they reintroduced me into that manner of storytelling. And as I kept painting, I fell into my authentic voice, which is this monochromatic painting style. To me, what we are is storytellers. Anybody who's doing a essentially representational painting, there is an implied story with the subject matter. The painting doesn't have to be about the subject matter, but it is the portal of entry into what the painting is about. Just as a book like, say, Huck Finn is nominally about a journey these two people take down a river, it is actually a meditation on a whole bunch of other issues. Painting is just like that. I may do a painting of a house, but it's not a painting about a house. It's a collection of light and dark shapes and how they fit together and how the edges work that hopefully evokes an emotional response in the viewer. That, to me, is the kind of storytelling that I'm talking about. The thing I love about this is it looks so gray. It's going to come out so brown on the surface. It's a terrible technique, though, because people never use enough paint. It's going to look like I advocate using this little amount of paint. I don't. This is just my leftover paint from the week. Having cats is good for something. You get the cat food container at least. Look at that, nearly done. Nearly done. Look, isn't that beautiful? That's the great thing. That's how I know I'm not bored doing this, that I still have more to explore, is I'm so excited when these first marks go down. They just look like the beginning of a story. Now, at this very early stage, I really am checking it against my source drawing. And the angle is a little off. I put down with the squeegee. What this does is it softens the line, so I'm not making really final decisions at this point. See, you wouldn't want to do this with conventional oils. I've got a friend who does. It's so dangerous. So this is the structure of the building. This is the roof line. Now this drip mark, it actually really looks quite a bit like a natural form, a tree. The sketch I'm working from, the trees are behind the building, but I could change the story and put the tree in front of the building. I'm not going to do that because the danger is that if you start telling one lie, you have to tell a million lies. And each lie has to be consistent with the previous lie. I know I've got a truth in my sketch, and if I adhere to that, I can create a successful image on this surface. This is water mixable safflower oil. It obviously thins the paint and stays open for a lot longer time than water, because as soon as the water evaporates, That's your volatile. That's the equivalent of OMS, odorless mineral spirits. And so it sets up very quickly. By putting the oil down, that keeps things moving in a very manipulable, style for a good long time. Now, I'm not thinking about what these actual things are. I'm just going from what my sketch is telling me to do. I think it's important to be thinking about the dynamic shapes, how the shapes interlock and stuff, as opposed to like exactly what is this lighter mark. I just know the lighter mark is in my source drawing. See how that stains? See how that is stained right there? The way to get around that, dip it in the oil, and that'll take you back to the brightest bright of the substrate. The important thing in a painting is for something, the narrative that I like in a painting is a dynamic interplay between sharp and soft, hard and gentle. That's what makes it dynamic. That's what makes it exciting. There are a million ways to tell a story. That is just one of the dynamics that I really like. The thing I think is crucial in reading a painting is seeing the authentic voice of the painter. To just reproduce exactly what is in front of one isn't terribly interesting. That is a set of technical exercises that, with enough practice, virtually anybody can master. What I look for, and what I think anybody who really is trying to understand what this little subgenre of representational art is all about, look for the authentic voice. Look for the way the artist is telling the story. When reading a representational painting from life, the thing I would keep in mind is, how is the artist telling this story? How are they making the scene in front of them distinctively their own? That is the exciting thing about this way of painting. How is the person telling the story? What adjectives are they using? When I'm painting from life, I almost invariably paint monochromatically. Why do I do that? Because to me, the way I tell that story is like I am removing all the adjectives. Color is adjectival. I'm taking away saying the blue sofa. I am saying the sofa. And I am saying the light was hitting the sofa this way. I'm not saying the yellow light was hitting the blue sofa this way. It's just a different way of telling stories, because someone else, it could be all about those colors. It can be all about whatever aspect of picture making that artist chooses. Painting is storytelling. Look for someone who tells a story in a way that speaks to you. Don't just say, oh, everybody loves this one thing, so therefore I love it. All of us are attracted to different ways of telling stories. As we develop as painters, we find ways of telling stories that work best for us. It just is easiest and most natural. Pay attention to that if you are just getting going as a painter. It's easy to downplay the things that are our natural strengths. I would pay attention to the way you tell the story best. When I started painting seriously, I discovered it was much easier for me to tell a convincing story with less chroma. I became less I became less obsessive about trying to get the hue exactly right, and I was able to pay much more attention to edges and values and shapes. And I think my paintings improved because of that. This brush needs to be cleaned. So funny, we make the same marks. You know, those repeating. Is that amazing though? That it looks, we read that as a distressed metal roof. Is that amazing? Look how evocative that is. Basically, it's Doug Fryer and I talk about this a lot. It's basically God is great. That this comes through us. That's amazing to me. Because I mean, that right there, the way that fades out, that is so exciting to me. The real magic about this is when these, well, to quote Bob Ross, happy little accidents happen. It just moves the painting into some place that you weren't even expecting. And that never gets old. That remains fundamentally thrilling. And it's the exciting moments of being a painter.
Okay.
This is why we know we're addicts. Can't stop messing with it, even when you're just making random marks. That's still too much of a blob to be an actual painting, but it's starting to have some personality, you know. You know what's most exciting is when you are putting marks down, you're in the painting, you're involved in the painting, and then a mark goes down that advances the story in a way that you hadn't consciously thought at all. It never gets old. If you're just getting going as a painter, the best advice I can give is get a sketchbook, put it in the car with you. Anytime you've got 20 minutes free, just sketch. That'll do more for your artistic growth than virtually anything. The second bit of advice I would give is if there's a painter whose work you really love and they do an online course, a long-term online course, sign up for that, study with that person. It is possible to try to take in too much, to take in the whole fire hose of all the different ways that all these different artists paint. You can't paint like everybody. If you try to paint like everybody, your work is going to have no focus, no distinctive voice whatsoever. See someone whose work you love, study with them. That'll go a long, long way in helping you develop your own voice. It's really kind of a golden age for our little world of art. The artists are producing good work. The national spotlight isn't really on them. So the work, I think, tends to be very honest and very real. If you see work that speaks to you, trust your inner voice that says, this is something that should be in my life. Don't pay attention to what the big world says. Trust yourself. This is art that is important, it's art that matters, and it's art that a normal human being can afford to invest in. It's work that is honest, it's work that is approachable, it's work that is affordable, and it brings joy over time.